What's up, guys? We made it back for a second episode. That must mean I had enough people listening to the first one, which was probably just about in the double figures, but that's all I asked. I had decent feedback and I had to come at you again. So we're going to hit you with some more music, and this time we're going back to 1995 for some Command & Conquer from the PC. Pretty epic ending to that track there. I was thinking about the sort of mid-90s when, you know, full-on proper music was being introduced into video games. Obviously the Super Nintendo had a really good sound chip for its time, but around that sort of 1995 time when the PlayStation, the Sega Saturn and everything was coming through and real CD quality music was coming in, the PC for a while was sticking with that sort of MIDI sound. You know, Command & Conquer, that was one of the first times it really sounded like proper music. But, you know, just before that, when a game like Doom came out, that was a real sort of MIDI sounding sort of heavy metal soundtrack. And unless and guess you had a really good sound system on your computer, maybe a decent Sound Blaster sound card or something, then it wouldn't sound necessarily brilliant. Because I had Doom on the Super Nintendo, and obviously, you know, I didn't know at the time, but obviously it's a far terrible port compared to the original PC version, or say the PlayStation or the Jaguar version. But the actual soundtrack to the Super Nintendo version was pretty damn good. You know, they really got a lot out of the sound chip. But I'm going to play you a track now from the PC original, which is obviously the sort of MIDI sounding version. So yeah, check this one out. This one I remember from the Super Nintendo, but and I actually think that version probably sounds better, but there was obviously a lot more to the soundtracks, a lot more tracks on the PC version. So let's check this one out. sounds like your perfect garage band there, doesn't it, really? Just people who ain't got great amplifiers, just jamming, playing riffs, rocking out. It's 1995 for you. Actually, no, I lied. Doom came out earlier than that, but to me, it was around 1995, you know. Everything was around 1995 to me. Right, we will move on again, and I'm going to pick a track from one of my favourite games, which is finally started to come out, that I call this game Contra now, Contra 3. Alien Wars, as opposed to Super Probotector, Alien Rebels, I think, which is what I know it as, because that's just how it was in the UK. But you know how it is these days, your Americanisms all kick in, and that's kind of overridden now, especially with the game being called Contra Worldwide these days. So this is from Contra 3, the Alien Wars, or Super Probotector, and another great example of a Konami track used on the Super Nintendo. Had to throw in that sort of main completed sort of mission theme that is really popular on them sort of 16-bit games from the time. It was something about listening to that mission complete theme, that stage clear, end of level sort of medley that they'd put together in these games, because they'd really stick with you over the years, don't they? Something you remember as a kid, just that great feeling of finishing a level or a stage and then getting rewarded with that little bit of sound that's kind of stuck with you over the years. I know Double Dragon had some good mission complete themes, and Streets of Rage was another one. So I'm going to play the sort of stage clear theme from Streets of Rage. I think it's Streets of Rage 2 actually, and then we'll drop straight into a track from the game as well, because I don't need to tell you at all about how great the Streets of Rage 2 soundtrack is. We all know it, which is why I'm going to play it, because we want to hear some good tunes and to bring back the memories. That's what we're here for. had to keep with the street theme, so to speak, there. So that was a track from Street Fighter 2, obviously. Funnily enough, it's the theme that we'd know as M. Bison's theme, but apparently in Japan it was Vega's theme. But funnily enough, although not funnily enough, M. Bison was actually Bullrog in Japan, which would make sense because M. Bison's like Mike Tyson. So God knows why things got mixed up, or maybe they were doing it to avoid lawsuits or something, but I don't know. But it's a bit of a strange one, that. So we're going to move away from the violence, we'll say. We're going to hit with a couple of themes now from platforming games, both Nintendo games. And firstly, this one's from Yoshi's Island, Super Mario World 2, a game that I began to love later in life. I remember renting it. Me and my friend Tugboat rented this game when it first came out would have been back end of 95, early 96 in the UK. And I think we were, how old would we have been then? 11 years old or so. And I guess we were expecting, a proper Super Mario platform that we were used to. So although it was different, it took a while to get used to it. And I don't think I fell in love with the game on first play, but over the years playing since, that game is up there with some of the greatest platformers ever. So unique, so much weird stuff in there, and such a great game that they kept the Super Nintendo's life going a bit longer. And here's one of the great songs from that. I think it's one of the first underground sort of themes on there. So I'm going to play this, and then we'll follow it up with some more platforming music. No, I don't really think after playing the 16-bit Yoshi's Island song and then jumping into that 8-bit Kirby's Adventure track, does it really any justice? That soundtrack for Kirby's Adventure is absolutely epic for an NES game. Obviously, it came quite late in the NES's life. But it was actually one of my favourite platformers as a kid. I just fell in love with the box art and the screenshots on the back. Didn't really know much about the game other than thinking it looked amazing for an NES game. And really got lucky that as obviously that did come in late in the NES life cycle, I actually found that in like a shop that we used to get our NES games in for like £5 each. They had no clue about what titles were worth any money or anything back then. And because obviously the Super Nintendo and the Mega Drive were already out by then, a lot of the NES games were being sold a fair bit cheaper. But to pick up Kirby's Adventure in about 1995 for £5 seemed like an absolute steal to me. It might have been even 94, so it would have been relatively soon after its release. But great soundtrack, amazing what they managed to pull out on the NES, the 8-bit system with that. Sometimes the game struggled a bit with sprites and stuff. There was a lot going on the screen, and there was a lot of slowdown at times, but you don't notice that so much when you're younger. You play it again now and you notice it a bit more. But amazing game. You know, they say it was aimed at children, and yeah, I was a kid at the time, but there's still enough challenge in that game and a lot of secrets to find. So I recommend someone to go back and play that if they ever missed Kirby's Adventure on the NES. We'll hit you up with one more platforming tune. This is again from the 16-bit era. This is from Donkey Kong Country 2. I believe this is from one of the fairground, is it Kremlin something or other, fairgroundy type levels. Here we go. Well, guys, we have to end, I guess, soon. And I just want to thank you again for listening, tuning in. I appreciate it. Any feedback is always welcome. Going to try and figure about doing some themed episodes. And Firstly, we're not just talking about genres or specific series, but want to do a series about people's stories through gaming, and obviously we can talk about the music through that. I'm not sure if I mentioned that in my last episode, but that is something I think I might bring into the next episode. Whether or not I have a guest straight away or I just do it myself, we'll see. Going to end on something epic now, because you want to end on a high. You want to end with you wanting to hear more. So this is the main theme from the first Metal Gear Solid game. Another game that was so ahead of its time, set new boundaries, and is still epic to play today. So here we go, bit of Metal Gear Solid. Take care, guys.